Holy shit, there we go. I was muted. Welcome back, everybody. I'm Mr. Justin, and this is Dominance Academy. And today we're going to be talking a little bit about the beginnings to understand what it is to be a dom. Because I think, generally speaking, if you're not in the lifestyle or you've only played a little bit, you don't really have a full understanding of what that must be like. So let's just get into it. I think one of the primary things to understand is that you're not just here to give orders, right? You've thought about it, you've fantasized about it, and you've decided that being a dom is for you, and that's good, right? But it's different when you take the ideas, the fantasies, and the theories into practice. There's a lot of nuance when it comes to the intersection of two or more people, right? So there's a big distance usually when a guy's getting into this between wanting to be a dom and actually being a dom. And it pays to be aware that there's more to be involved in this than you might think. So guys might think, well, how hard can it be? Basically, I just like give orders, and then the other person just follows what I say. And it's a lot more nuanced than that. It's not like you've just got a dog and you train the dog, and then they just follow you. That's really not how it works. And yes, I know domination, it's like in the definition basically of to dominate someone, but the dictionary definition of dominate doesn't really equate to the lifestyle, because we're not here just to lord over someone. And I think that's kind of what draws guys into it. Many guys who don't have any power in their life, and then they seek out the BDSM lifestyle, and they maybe get a taste of it, or they get some education around it, and they think to themselves, this is for me. This is a place where I can feel powerful. I can feel like my voice and my choices matter, because there's people out there on the other side of the slash who are submissive, who are willing to follow. And it's a big mistake that a lot of guys make when they come into this lifestyle, and they start thinking to themselves, oh, well, all I got to do is just find a submissive and I'll just tell them what to do. And they'll go on to places like FetLife. If you don't know, FetLife, FET Life, is it's a forum-based website where you can actually learn a lot about the lifestyle. There's tons of different pages in there surrounding all sorts of kinks, from the psychological to the physical. And so I encourage you to go there. You can learn quite a bit, and perhaps make some friends. So they'll go on to places like FetLife, and they'll just start engaging with subs on there and start telling them what to do right off the bat, thinking to themselves, well, I'm a dom, they're a sub, they should just listen to me. Excuse me. And that's not how it works. So really, it's more complicated than that, and context is really important. Being a dom is not about being bossy, and nobody gets to tell everyone what to do all of the time. In fact, it's not even about telling all the subs what to do all the time. The first mistake that a lot of doms likely to make is in believing that a DS relationship dynamic is simple. And it's like, you're a dom, you see someone who's a sub as a dom, your rightful place is just telling them what to do, and that person just owes you respect. And that's really further that couldn't be any further from the truth. So for starters, if you want respect, you have to do more than say, I'm a dom, worship me. In fact, saying I'm a dom, worship me is a good way to get ridiculed and laughed at in the lifestyle. Because for people who are seasoned and people who do know about how things work, you just come off as completely ridiculous and adolescent in your thinking. So what a lot of novice doms miss is that a DS relationship is in fact a relationship, even if it's temporary, even if it happens only at something like a play party. Um, a relationship exists between the dominant and the submissive because both people have made the choice. They've made that choice to be there and to get into that mindset and to feel the feelings that are involved and to take on the behaviors that are in that setting. So believing that you can tell a submissive what to do before you have established some sort of relationship, which gives you the authority, is a bit like believing that any man can tell any woman to have sex with him because, well, after all, men have sex with women. Do you see how it's similar? Just because you can doesn't mean that you ultimately have that ability anywhere and everywhere you go. And so having this dynamic is not like a default setting. So do not assume even for a second that simply being a dom grants you any authority or presumption of power over someone who is submissive. This is a misguided and completely foolish mindset, assuming that being a man grants you any presupposition or presumption over of sex over someone who is a woman. And the same way, like just because you identify as a dominant, it doesn't grant you automatic worship, automatic respect, automatic power. Now, generally speaking, if you go into, say, a play party or a sex party, or you go to a sex club, generally speaking, there's going to be respect because in these environments, you're having people there that are seasoned. So there's going to be more seasoned people than there are noobs. And so, generally speaking, there's going to be a general sense of respect that goes all around, doms to the subs, subs to the doms, and everybody in between. So I'm just like looking at my notes here. So you might say to yourself, well, submissives are submissive because they ultimately want to submit to a dom. And that might be true, but that doesn't mean that any particular submissive wants to submit to you just because you wear the hat. Assuming that someone wants to submit to you simply because that person is submissive is exactly like assuming that a heterosexual woman would want to have sex with you simply because you're a heterosexual man, and vice versa. Do you see how that plays out? I hope that makes sense. And along the lines of like with respect is always earned. It's something that's not given out. So like I said, even at like these parties, there's going to be like this low level general sense of respect. There's going to be general sense of respect, but the direct respect for you and how you move, how you think, how you behave, and the things that you want, that part of your individual respect as it pertains to your specific program, that's to be earned. Respect that's just handed out willy-nilly really isn't respect, now is it? That's just not the way it goes. And really it shouldn't be based on just because you have the title. It's because you walk the walk and you talk the talk. So your behaviors back up your title. So we don't like, just walk up to somebody and say, all right, worship me. It doesn't, even if you were that ballsy, it just doesn't work that way. So moving on here, and doms might be the like kind of confused a little bit by this at first, just because you don't have the immersion in spaces to really understand how the dynamics work. when you're, say, like at a munch, and a munch is uh, you can find these on FetLife as well. You can go to events and search in your area and find munches. And munches are basically where like kinky lifestylers get together in a social environment that is non-sexual. So they'll be, someone will start the event and say, hey, there's going to be a munch at so and so restaurant or so and so bar, and be there at 7:30. And you just go in and you meet people, talk to them, you talk about lifestyle stuff, you create friendships, you create acquaintances, share information, talk about other events, whatever. It's just socializing. And and these are helpful because a lot of people who are in the lifestyle are a little bit weird sometimes. They're a little bit socially awkward sometimes. Maybe not so out there with having like a lot of friends, and so it's good for them to create these bonds and create these friendships. And also, if you're just getting into it, it's a great opportunity to ask questions and learn. And everyone's just very friendly and easygoing. But I suggest that if you go to munches, don't treat them like it's some sort of dating thing, or you're going there to meet someone to play with or get into a relationship with. That's really not the general intent, although that can happen. You might meet somebody and really click, and then it's good. But don't go into it with the intention that you're going to meet somebody to fuck. All right. So go to FetLife, check out events, put in your location and the mileage radius of your search, and that can give you an idea of what sort of events. And there's other events too, like parties and clubs and all sorts of fun stuff. So um so doms might be wondering, back to the topic, if someone, it might be confusing to hear what I said about submissives. Like, if someone doesn't want to be dominated, then why would that person be a submissive? Because guys just think like, oh, if she's submissive, she's just open to it. And yeah, it's true, like in a general sense. So in a general sense, that's what the submissive is in general. But but each sub is going to have certain types of, I don't know, triggers or symbols or behaviors that allow them to get into that state. And I'll tell you, they're all different. They're all very quite different. There's no two subs that are alike. And in that same sentence, there's no two DOMs that are alike. But I'll tell you, it's really important then to understand your program, to understand your values, to understand your kinks, to understand what your needs are, and put all these things together along with what I talk about is your constitution. So get all this stuff together, because the more you know yourself as a dominant, the more confidently you can present this wherever you go. So that if a sub is interested in you, say if you go to a sex party or you're meeting somebody online or even at a munch, there's no faltering, there's no second guessing. Everything is clearly understood and ran through in your mind, so that there's no confusion on your part. Because one of the most because in BDSM we are dealing with somewhat dangerous things sometimes, right? We're dealing with floggers, we're dealing with breath play, we're dealing with electricity sometimes, knives, hot wax, psychological stuff, which can potentially be more dangerous than any of the physical stuff. And so we're dealing with potentially dangerous things here. And the more certain you are, I mean real certainty, not played certainty, or the less uncertainty that you have within you, the greater confidence that she can have or the sub can have in you. And they'll feel it. They'll feel it. Like, talk to any woman about the feeling the uncertainty in a guy when she's talking to him, and she'll be able to tell you all about it, of what it's like on her end. And it doesn't feel good. It doesn't give them confidence that you're confident. And they'll be reluctant to move forward, even if you're good looking, even if you're smooth, even if you got, you know, great clothes or a good mouthpiece. If they catch a sense of uncertainty in you, then it's going to be a bit of a turnoff. Maybe not a complete turnoff. Maybe it will, maybe it won't, but there will be an aspect in varying degrees of being turned off. And they will be second guessing, kind of like side eye looking at you, wondering, is this guy really who he believes himself to be? So I encourage you to really gain a very thorough understanding of what you're standing on as a man, and a thorough understanding of your own sexuality as a dom, along with your principles, your values, your codes, your personal laws, and so on and so on. So with that said, that's when it becomes easier to bring a submissive into your world. So basically, when you're meeting someone, be it like online or in person, I think in person is better. But you can't ignore that there's just a lot of connection happening online. It helps to have all of this buttoned up. It really does. Instead of going with your impulses, to get into that mode. And I harp on this quite a bit about having a conductor mind and not being driven by the craving for sexual gratification, the craving to have a submissive underneath you or behind you, or however you want to look at it, who is on their knees in front of you, either physically or metaphorically speaking. You really have to control that desire for that to happen, because when you have that under control, you're less impulsive. You're less impulsive about your words, and you're less impulsive about your behaviors. And then it gives you a better ability to plan and move strategically and move with purpose. And then going back to all the other stuff that I always bring up, if that purpose is backed by an understanding of really what you're about and what your program is based on, then it becomes a lot more clear to her. And then you leave it up to her to decide if she wants to, come to your world. And I talk about that a lot as well, where there's a great misunderstanding. See, guys, when they're first coming into this shit, they think, well, if I'm dominant, then I can just be dominant and tell people what to do. I can have a brash personality. I can just say or do whatever I want and have like a very, just that like abrasive attitude. And if that's really how you are, by all means, be that, right? Be who you are, for sure. But understand that is not going to be conducive for cooperation on, many levels, especially if you get involved in the scene. If you're going to parties, if you're going to events, if you're going to munches, if you're going to sex parties, if you're going to sex clubs, if you've got an attitude like that, and that's truly who you are, it's not going to go very well for you. It really isn't. So just keep that in mind, that we're dealing with a community here, and respect is huge in this community, because the truth is that there's a lot of hurt people in this community. There's people who have had tremendous levels of abuse, and through BDSM, they actually find therapy. So they're very sensitive towards certain types of behaviors. And this is both with DOMs and subs. So to think that like doms are not scarred, they absolutely can be. So just keep that in mind if you're getting into the social aspects of this. And so, when you're um when you're a dom, it's like, again, it's not about coming out and telling people what to do and being all bossy and shit like that. It's really about having an invitation. And this is why it's so important to have everything buttoned up, to really understand what you're about and what you stand on, what your constitution is, what your values, and all this stuff, understanding your kinks, your sexuality, really knowing a thorough amount of who you are and what you're about. Once you have that established, that's when this becomes an invitation. So you're talking to a woman, and hopefully you've got a good mouthpiece on your hands, which allows you to convey all of that which you are. It won't be very easy if you've got this great foundation and then you're stumbling over your words, or you're speaking too quiet. You're not being very forthright with your communication, and there's no flavor on it. There's nothing tasty about it. Then it's going to be hard to create that invitation. So think about it with marketing. A company has a product and they're trying to sell it to you. You look at the advertisement. Say, like, look at cars. All right, cars, they have some of the best advertising ever. It's just a damn car. It's an engine with wheels, a frame, a body, seats, the basics. Got the air conditioning, radio. Sometimes they have GPS. Sometimes they have some extra bells and whistles, but it's still just a car. But you see a car commercial, and they make it sound like one of the coolest inventions ever made. And they got cool cameras. They got flyby camera views. They've got fantastic music to convey a certain feeling, right? They just want to give you this taste. And a commercial is only maybe 15 seconds long, or I can't remember how long television commercials are supposed to be, but they're not long at all. It's just a few seconds. And in that, they convey a feeling about their product. And that's all it is. It's just the feeling. So when you're talking to a woman, it's best to have a developed mouthpiece so that you can convey the feeling of what you have, of what you are, of what your product is, so to speak. And that's how you can create this offering, to create this invitation. Because you're not there to demand that she follow you. You invite her to follow you. And you have to accept that it's not going to be for everyone. That's just the way it goes. You're not going to be able to attract or seduce or invite anybody who comes your way. That's not going to, that doesn't make any sense. Okay. So it's important to just understand that it's, there is going to be probably more no's than yeses, but don't ever take that as, say, a failure, right? There's no really such thing as failure. There's just like either I win or I learn. And also learning is understanding that you're not going to be for everyone. And that's just the way it goes. You're not going to be for everyone. And the more you accept that, and more so your attention should be turned towards yourself. You're not really going to be bothered so much by what, if somebody likes what you've got going on or not. It really just doesn't matter, because you're just all about yourself. Like your cup is full. You're not really needing any of their input to your cup in order to feel, of worth or to feel established. I hope that makes sense. Really, your cup should be completely full from within. So they don't really have the pressure of need. See, when you have need, that puts pressure on the other person to fulfill. And then when they don't fulfill, then your needs, which are attached to deep emotions, usually, they come out, and then you get upset, you get disgruntled, you get moody, Maybe you get standoffish, you get cold, or whatever. You start pouting, or you throw a fit, or you just act brashly. You tell them to get away, or you block them, or whatever. And when your cup is full with yourself, then if they say, no, I'm not interested, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at all. Just like if one of these car companies, Lexus or whatever, they've got their car and someone says, you know what, I don't like your car, I don't want to buy your car. Do you think Lexus really cares? No, because they fully believe in their product. Their belief in their product doesn't come from whether you want to buy it or not. They still think they're the best car company in the world. And that's really the kind of pride that you should have in yourself, without needing something from the outside to verify that what you believe is true. It should be true to you regardless. And this comes from understanding self-love and self-prioritization, actualizing yourself through understanding your compass, through understanding your values, your codes, your principles, getting understanding with your laws, really knowing your internal state or your internal kingdom or your house or whatever sort of analogy you want to make. But it's getting that to a clear understanding. And the more you understand it, the less foggy it is. It becomes clear to you. And then it becomes something you can actually be proud of, because you can say to yourself, I made this. This is something that I decided on, and it's mine. And then once there's belief behind that, no one can say anything. They can say, I don't like that. You're like, okay, like it, don't care. And not in a sort of sour grapes, bitter sort of way. Like, oh, I don't care if you don't like me. Meh. Right? It's not like that. It's very easygoing, very open palms. Like, okay, that's fine with me. It doesn't really matter. Because when you're solid like that, like I mentioned this in the previous video of having steel inside, that steel fortress that protects these things that you value in yourself so much, it doesn't matter what they say. It doesn't matter what they do. They cannot affect you. And the more clear this is, the more clear this world is inside of you, the greater chance you have of creating an invitation. Just like with the car commercial, they do their best. They use the best creatives in advertising to create the clearest feeling with the best visuals to convey the full punch of what they believe their car is about in just a few seconds. That's what they aim to do. And a lot of times they're very successful. And that's basically what you have to do. And that's where your mouthpiece comes into play, where you are talking with a woman and you're able to convey what you're about, either directly and you're saying, hey, this is what I'm about. Because I'll tell you what, in the BDSM world, when you go to munches, you go to play parties or whatever, direct, clear, concise communication is extremely valuable, because they want to know exactly what they're getting into. They want to know exactly what you're about. Like if you're a rigger, meaning that you're into rope play, if you're a rigger and you're a sadistic rigger, meaning you enjoy inflicting pain and you enjoy rope play, and you're talking to somebody at this party trying to decide if you want to go into one of the rooms and play a little bit, or on a stage even, then they need to know exactly what they're possibly getting into. Maybe they're not a masochist. Well, that's not going to be a good fit. Maybe they don't get off with pain. Maybe they're not into rope play. Maybe they are. But it helps to be very, very clear about these things. Damn. So the way you can go about this is to be very direct, but also it helps to have a little bit of style. It helps to have a little bit of smooth presentation, because being able to convey yourself, just like the commercial does, in a smooth, enticing way is also extremely effective. But that's a lot different because it requires practice. It requires the ability to be creative, and it helps to understand the psychology of those who listen. It helps understand the power of words and be able to play with words and find windows, to create windows, to go through them and basically flip and alter the direction of the conversation the way you want it to go, while at the same time eliciting some sort of emotional response. And that sounds a little bit complex, and it very much can be if you're doubting yourself and you don't have any sort of practice in this. You don't have any sort of confidence because you don't do this sort of thing on a regular basis. But this is something I teach my guys because it's nothing that I can really bring out onto YouTube, because it is involved. It is quite involved in learning how to communicate in a creative and effective way. So it's very difficult to do this on YouTube because it's very much individual and it's somewhat complicated. So, but if it's something you want to learn, it absolutely can be learned. You can learn to have a skillful mouthpiece. Just in the same way, if you see somebody freestyle rapping and you go, wow, I would really like to be able to freestyle rap. It's not something people are just born with, right? It's a skill that people develop over time through consistent practice. So that said, you can develop a skillful mouthpiece so that you can convey what you want in a creative and effective manner. And then that's when you can present this invitation to her. And that invitation is an invitation to your dominance. That's what it is. But once they're there, that's when you start helping them understand what your domination is about. Because like I said, there's different kinds of doms. And I'm not really into labels and such. But to give you an idea, I'll use myself as an example. I'm what you would call a sadistic, strict daddy dom. So you can imagine a father type that is strict yet loving, with a little bit of a hint of sadism. I do get off on pain play. So, but I'm not like a level 10 sadist, right? I'm probably like a level 3 or 4. But I'm also very strict, but I'm also very caring, much like that. You can imagine that kind of father type role. And that's how I see myself. That's how I naturally behave. So when they come in, they get a little taste of what you're about. And the more time they spend in your world after you invite them in, they say, okay, I will see what you're about. And then you slowly give them more and more and more as they're willing to submit to it, right? Once they find interest in what you've got going on, and they show greater and greater interest, they show greater and greater involvement, and they start committing themselves to what you have, then you can meet that and show more and more of what your program is all about. And because if you were to take your program and show them, like, say, all the rules, I mean, I've got probably about 60 rules that are for my dynamic, and my girl hasn't even been exposed. She's probably been exposed to about maybe a third of them. And we've been together for a while. And that's because I don't want to slam them all in, and then it becomes this huge wave of expectation. And this would have caused her to buck, to kind of like pucker up and back off, right? And we don't want that. We want them to slowly immerse themselves into your situation. And so you can't just come out with the whole shebang, and they get overwhelmed by seeing this wall and say, oh shit, I got to learn how to climb this thing. It's not like that. You just offer one step at a time, one little step, right? And you say, oh, good job, you did that one, cool, here's another step, good job, good girl, you did that one. And you keep going and keep going and keep going. Maybe they stumble, maybe they don't get it right, and you have to correct them. And that's a great way to keep things going in a progressive manner, by using correction, by using discipline, by using rewards, by using recognition. And that's another thing that DOMs don't realize, is that they think that they can, like new DOMs, they come in and they think, well, I can just do this and just tell people what to do, and that's that. And they don't first have an understanding of why they want to tell something to, or someone to do something. What's your reasoning behind it? Just because you want it done? And usually it's just something sexual, which is kind of lame. Like, it's just it's very short-sighted. And I get that, like, sex is fun, but there's a lot more to this world. There's a lot more to it. We're talking about behavior modifications that go far deeper than just doing something sexual that you enjoy. So just know that this world is far more nuanced than the media tends to reveal. They just kind of show you the surface stuff. Or if you look at porn, you just see little snippets of what you can actually see. What's real in a DS dynamic is actually a bunch of stuff that you can't see. You can't see the most important stuff because it happens in languages that are unspoken. It happens in conversations behind closed doors. It happens during messages. It happens during, like, eye communication. It can happen even in hand gestures, where you have a certain rule about a certain something and you expect a certain behavior, and it's trained that you do a certain hand gesture and it means that they need to do something. And it can be whatever. It doesn't have to be something sexual. So I know that, like, on the surface, you look at porn, you look at the media, you look at websites and stuff. I mean, shoot, even my own Instagram has a lot of sexual stuff on it. And that's just because that's a great selling point. But by and large, most are not trying to sell you something. They're just portraying the lifestyle. And that's what really gets the most eyes. But that's not really what it's about. The sex stuff is just an expression of many of the dynamic. And it just so happens to be a really fun way to express it. But there are equally as fun ways to express it. There's, like, I can't express the kind of joy that it brings me when I see certain behaviors that are non-sexual, that weren't there before but are here now. Or I hear certain words or phrases that were no longer present that are now present. So, for example, I'm a big fan of good manners and gratitude. I love it when my woman says thank you for everything. And to me, that's right up there with, like, my favorite sexual practices of sharing genuine gratitude. And this is with the mundane stuff. Say we go out, we do something, and I hear thank you for this, and there's a complete sentence about it. It's just not like, hey, thank you, right? There's a complete sentence. Thank you, Daddy, for blah, 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 blah. Or even during sex, thank you for giving me your dick. Thank you for using me. Thank you for giving me orgasms. But it's about the gratitude. Like, that's, I guess maybe I've got a kink around that, right? It's not something that like really gets me off, so it's probably not a kink, but it's something that's very strong and important for me. And so this is what I mean about knowing yourself, knowing knowing what what's important to you. And for me, expressing gratitude absolutely is important. It's one of the greatest things for me. So you got to know what's really great for you and then instill that. So I'm reminding my girl all the time in various situations where it hasn't really been learned. What do you say? And that's a reminder for her to say thank you. Now, if I wanted to, I could change this into a hand gesture. I could just go like this. Maybe this is what the gesture is, two fingers up like this. And that's a reminder for her to say thank you in complete sentences. So just, I say this, like I mentioned before, it's just an example of knowing what you're about, really knowing, because from there, because this is something that I know of myself, now I have a, a, a pathway, and I understand why. I understand why this is important to me. And so therefore I can lead from that. So if you don't know the things that you like, the things that you need, the things that are conducive to your program, then you're not really going to be able to lead. You're going to be leading from a position of instinct, knee-jerk reactions. You're going to be leading from impulse. And this is really not true leadership. Because if you're doing something and someone says, well, why are you doing this? They can easily say, well, I'm doing this because I don't like what they're doing, or this is just what I want. And that's not a deep enough why. That's not a deep enough understanding of the reasons why you're wanting to have this implemented into your program. So it's really important to understand yourself. I mean, just as a man, like just on a basic level, being a man, you really got to know what you're about in order to move forward so that she's clear. Like I mentioned earlier, the uncertainty. If she gets a sense that you're uncertain, then she's going to be more reluctant to follow you. It makes complete sense. And we've seen this in group settings. Like if you ever worked on a team or been part of a sports team and the leader of the team is second guessing themselves, or you don't get that feeling of strong belief in what they're doing, you are not really going to be 100% in. But when you've been around somebody who's really fired up and they're really believing and they're talking about what they want to do with conviction, then you're more likely to get behind them. In fact, studies have been done about conviction, and people have had like the craziest freaking ideas or completely stupid ideas. But because of the level of conviction they had behind those ideas, people were willing to follow. And I mean, we can see this in all throughout history as well, with very influential people who had really crazy freaking ideas. And because they were filled with so much conviction, people were like, yeah, you know what? That makes sense. Sure. I'll drink this Kool-Aid and commit suicide. And so it's just the power of influence. But if you don't fully believe, first of all, you got to know. If you don't know, then how can you believe? So first you have to create knowledge. Knowledge of what? Then once you have the knowledge of the what, then you can believe in it. Then once you have full belief, then it can be kind of held tight with conviction. And when it's held tight with conviction, then you're more able to talk about it. You're able to convey it with conviction, and people can feel that off of you. And then if they're really digging it, they're like, all right, this guy seems like he's really talking the talk and walking the walk. I'm going to check him out. And then allow her the time. Allow her the time, because remember, your cup is full. You don't need her for anything. Allow her the time to make that decision. All the while, you're watching her to see if she's willing to get on your program by giving little bits each step of the way, little steps building upon each other as time goes on. And next thing you know, if she's really on it, she's going to be way the hell up here, because you've set things up. You've created the opportunity to prove herself, to prove her desire, to prove her conviction in you, and to prove her willingness to follow you. And it's just a funny thing, because when you're there, when you're in this place of having that full cup, at least on an emotional level, you don't really care anymore whether she's following you or not, because it doesn't come from, let me replace that. Yes, you care, but it's from a different place. It's no longer tethered to your emotions. It's tethered to something else entirely, perhaps loyalty. But it's no longer attached to your emotions. So you're not, if they do happen to fall off, when your cup is full, you're no longer affected by it. It's like, oh shucks, well, I guess that didn't work out. But it's extremely dangerous when you have that emotional tether and you are emotionally counting on them to fulfill their part. Now it's like, if they slip, now you kind of lurch. You have a knee-jerk reaction to that. And all they did was slip. Maybe they miss a step. And now you're having some sort of reaction. And now you're coming at them, or maybe you're bottling it up, or maybe just whatever it is, you're reacting to the situation. When your cup is full, you're able to respond the way a good dad should, right? So when the kid messes up based off of something you've set up for them you've presented the opportunity to position them to succeed, and they slip up, or maybe they purposely do the opposite. If you are emotionally tethered to this situation, then you're going to have you're going to feel a certain way about it. It's going to get your feelings. And now you're going to get upset. You're going to maybe come at them with anger and frustration. Versus if you don't have that emotional tether and your cup is full, you're able to see the situation for what it is. And then from there, you can think more clearly and make decisions on how to correct and how to re-guide. Because it's a quick way to reduce trust if you fly off the handle. Or you don't even have to fly off the handle, but if you just react poorly, it's a great way to reduce trust. And then once their trust becomes eroded, it starts acting like a cavity in the mouth. It's just starts growing and growing and growing. And it's because once that little bit of distrust happens off of your behavior, right? They might come in with some of their own distrust, but I'm saying distrust created off of your behavior. If it's not redirected and guided to a proper direction very quickly, it will erode the dynamic. It will erode your relationship. That trust will be gone. And once that trust starts rotting, it's nearly impossible to bring it back. You're going to have to work hard. So it's really important that you do not have these situations. Like, I had a client who was like that. He was very moody, and he was having a difficult time with maintaining his emotional control. And so he would have something go wrong, so to speak, in his dynamic. Things wouldn't go the way he wanted, and then his woman would have a certain reaction, and then he would become either very outwardly verbally violent, where he would explode, he would have harsh things to say, or he would become really, really passive aggressive. and bottle it up and starts, slamming cupboard doors or stomping around the house. And someone's like, "What's wrong with you?" And they're like, nothing's wrong with me. And, and so he had this problem. And whenever he would do this, her submission would drop off, because submission is deeply tied to trust. So, and I would say it's on a 1-to-1 ratio. A woman will submit to you as much as they trust you, and they will trust you as much as they will submit to you. They go hand in hand. And so what happened with him is that when he had these emotional outbursts and she saw this, she would most definitely have an emotional reaction of her own, and it would be one of backing off. Because it was saying to her, this guy isn't grounded in himself. This guy is uncertain. I can't predict when he's going to fly off the handle and when he's not, when he's going to get passive aggressive. Oh shit. Sorry. When he's going to get passive aggressive, and when he is going to start shouting and, carrying on and having a tantrum. When this happens, it really offset her, and it made her feel unstable and uncertain. So, and then she backs off. So it's just really important to understand that you need to have emotional control. And it starts with having your own cup full and not having that need, not having that emotional tether, because if you don't have that tether, something could happen over there with her and it doesn't affect you. It doesn't change how you stand. It doesn't change your internal structure at all. And that's the consistency that they can depend on. And then she will say to herself, wow, okay, so I just flipped the fuck out, or I was having a bad day, or I got really depressed, or I was angry, or I was sad, or I was worried, and he was unaffected. He was the same. I can count on this guy to be my rock. I can count on him to be a strong pillar amidst a storm, or like I like to say, a mountain. He is unmoved. So take that into your understanding when getting into BDSM, when inquiring about DS relationships. If you're a new dom and you're just getting into this stuff, know that it really begins with you. It really begins with having a solid foundation inside of yourself that you are confident about, that you are proud about, that you have full knowledge of, that you believe in. And therefore you will be able to convey this with conviction when you get into conversations with submissives, with potential submissives to you. So make your way into FetLife, create a membership. It's free. And then start making your way around the website and see what it has to offer. At the very least, it'll give you an understanding, a little bit of that world, and check out the different forums. There's so many different forums for different things. And, just take it all in and don't judge, and just see what it's about. And then that will help you gain a better understanding of who you are. If you want to know even more and you want a little bit more guidance on this, you can always contact me. My email is thedominanceacademy@gmail.com, and we can set up a conversation. The first call is always free. Okay, until next time, I'll talk to you later.